Welcome, everyone, to the JonTopofIt show. My guest today is Ry Downey, poetry writer and author of the book Flowers Leaning Toward the Sun. Oh, this camera. And the upcoming book, The Dinosaurs Are Orange in Seattle. I love that title. Ry, thanks for being on the show.
Dude, thank you so much for having me. It's I'm really stoked.
Yeah. Now we're here to talk about poetry, which is something that I don't have a lot of experience with, but I'm actually really interested in talking about it because I feel like there's a lot to learn about here. So, Ry, I think it'd be fun to just start off by saying, like, how did you get started writing poetry?
All right. So there's a bit of a story, I guess. So I started writing poetry when I was in high school, and it was all like super rhymey. And it was like, you know, my love life and all the like heartbreaks and stuff like that. And it just ended up feeling like, or sounding like, someone was trying to write poetry, which is kind of like the kiss of death when you're trying to write actual honest poetry. So
what do you mean by that?
So I mean that if you're trying to write something that you think that someone else wants to hear, or if you're writing something out of some preconceived idea that is not exactly yours about what poetry is, then it's going to come off sounding at best not like you, and at worst like just something very like self-indulgent.
Yeah.
And
So there's something like that's off about the poetry itself, and it's like people can't sometimes put their finger on it, but you can just kind of tell it's either disingenuous or like, yeah.
Exactly. And it's not necessarily like not intentionally disingenuous by any sort like stretch of the imagination. Like there are a lot of people out there I know right now who are writing poetry that is absolutely from their heart, but it still isn't quite them and not honest and like not their true voice or not their true poetry. And it's honestly, I feel like it's a pursuit and a process that takes a lifetime to like, you know, get the voice that you are trying to achieve at, which is your own.
Okay. That makes sense. All right. So from my understanding, the short version of that answer, why you got started writing poetry, was to like express yourself about maybe like women or breakups or things of that nature. It was like a form of self-expression.
Yeah.
And so were they for yourself or were they for your interests? Both?
Definitely it approached both, but for the most part it was for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Most people have never seen those poems. I thought they were gone until a couple months ago. Through COVID, I've been actually staying with my parents, and so I found a treasure trove, if you want to call it that, of my old work, and I found the spiral notebook that I wrote all those poems in. I was just like, oh my God, no one's gonna see these. I haven't destroyed them yet, so I can't guarantee that, but
Yeah. 100 years later.
Yeah, right. SpongeBob reference? Was
Yeah.
that? Yeah, okay.
Kind of. But why poetry? Like, you could have just written prose, right? Like, you could have just written free form. Like, why does it have to rhyme or have subtext? Or, I mean, again, I don't know a lot about poetry, but like the things that I have read about it, it's like, it's a certain style that you've chosen. And I don't know, if it's for yourself, why does it matter? Like for me, maybe I would just want to just get it out on a piece of paper just for self-reflection, but to then take it a step further and put it within a certain like style, it's like, what drove you to do that?
Well, I will start off by saying that after my first failed foray into poetry, I started writing short stories and novels.
Okay.
And I wrote about 3 novels. None of them ever saw the light of day. Never published them. I didn't think they were good enough. But when I was in college, I had a group of writing friends, and they all suggested that I do poetry, and I was just like, no, I suck at poetry. And it was just kind of like this thing that I believed about myself because of the old poems I had read. And then I took a poetry class in college, and the professor totally ruined it for me. Like, he just turned me so far off of it that I didn't revisit the idea for.
What'd they do?
Oh, they just the way they talked about poetry, and I think it was the attitude of the teacher himself, not necessarily his attitude about poetry, but just the way that he treated me and other students. I was just kind of like, at the moment, I was still learning, I was still young. So like him and poetry became kind of dovetailed in my mind, and I found it very difficult to kind of shirk that idea. And then I stopped writing for a very long time because I was doing a lot of psychedelics, and I just didn't have like.
Wait! I feel like that would have made you want to have written more poetry.
Yeah, but I mean, for
it was that much.
I guess yeah. It depends, because there's moments where I would have like a full train of thought, and then I would start to try and like expound upon it or elucidate it, and it would just like fall flat. I would get like 5 words in, and then the words would like evaporate. It was like they hadn't fully imprinted themselves on me. So as I was trying to speak them, I would like rub them away.
Okay.
So yeah. So then after that, I just I went through another breakup, and I had stopped doing psychedelics for about a half year. And then I just had like an angry voice that spoke up in my head. And it's actually in that book. It's called Nuclear Summer, and that was the first poem I ever wrote that sounded like me. And I felt a power, and I felt a place of like a feeling of belonging when I wrote it. And I was like, oh, this is a poem. Like I knew that it was a poem when I wrote it, and it's an almost like indescribable feeling. But I wrote the poem, and I was just like, oh, I can do this. So this is what it's like to like speak like me and sound like me. And so after that moment, I was kind of hooked. And to go back to your question about why poetry, what's his name? There's a poet, Billy Collins. He does a master class for writing poetry. And the thing that he said was, poetry is like a diary with the lock broken off. And so what I think separates...
This right here? This guy?
Yep, that's him.
Okay.
That's
Have
Billy
you been
Collins.
through this?
Yes, I have.
Oh, interesting.
I don't have the master pass, but I specifically bought one pass for the master class that Billy Collins gave, and I thought it was great.
Okay.
He has a bunch of interactive stuff, notebook entries and stuff like that to kind of follow through on the course with. So I recommend it to anyone who wants to write poetry. I guess ultimately I would say that poetry is different from prose or novels or short stories in that it tries to find the shortest route between language and emotion. So you can use dream imagery or logic that doesn't quite make sense in either the grammatical or rhetorical sense, but when you speak it, you feel it.
Is there a quick way that you could give me an example to like illustrate this to people that are maybe not very imaginative?
Yeah, I could probably find should have come prepared with this.
Oh, it's okay. I think some of the things that I was reading about when it comes to like the differences between just writing in general and poetry is like there is subtext, like there is extra meaning sometimes, or like the words, the pattern of the arrangement or the words themselves can suggest extra meanings, and that let's see, like the sounds, the rhythms, the possible meanings, and the look of the words themselves, they create like an experience. They said it's a bit, I read that it's a bit like eating, that like a delicious meal isn't about anything. It's meant to be tasted and enjoyed.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Can you pull up the poem Howl by Allen Ginsberg?
Yeah, hold on one second. Howl?
Howl, yes.
How do you spell? Howl?
Yeah.
Allen Ginsberg.
I thought of an example as to what I mean.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so...
Can you see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just, if you can... I don't know. I'm just going to read the first part.
Okay, sure.
And then I'll kind of try and pick out something that is exemplary of what I mean.
Sure.
I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves through the Negro streets at dawn looking for an angry fix. Angel-headed hipsters burning for the ancient heavenly connection to the starry dynamo in the machinery of night, who poverty and tatters and hollow-eyed and highs sat up smoking in the supernatural darkness of cold water flats, floating across the tops of cities contemplating jazz, who bared their brains to heaven under the El and saw Mohammedan angels staggering on tenement roofs illuminated, who passed through universities with radiant cool eyes hallucinating Arkansas and Blake Light tragedy among the scholars of war.
Wow.
Yeah, right? So
That's intense.
right, exactly. And so the
Alan.
phrase yeah, I know he's on one. Allen Ginsberg is one of my favorite poets of all time. And so like angel-headed hipsters, angry fix. A lot of what poetry is sound, because it's very akin to music. And back in the day, one reason why it was rhymed so much was because it was sung. Mm-hmm. So song lyrics, we were talking about song lyrics earlier before the show started, and poetry, and they are very, 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 very similar. And they were even more similar back in the day because they were much more metered and had a certain beat to them. And now, lately, poetry still works that way, according to which poet you read, but sound is also very... a very key function to poetry. So angel-headed hipsters, like you can hear those beats and they hit very heavily. Mm-hmm. And angel-headed hipsters, like you have the repeating H sound, which is the kind of it ingrains a kind of musicality into the lines.
I also noticed the alliteration in some parts. Like it'll say smoking in the supernatural. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it just like flows really well.
Exactly. And then you have like machinery of night, like that phrase. Like what does that mean? Like night machinery. That's what I mean by leaps of logic and kind of like dream imagery. Mm-hmm. Because when you say machinery of night, like night, go ahead.
What's left up to the person reading the poem? Like, is it a robot? Is it a car?
Exactly. Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's where the inner meaning or subtext of poetry comes in, but it's not so like cut and dried like the teachers that you had in school might try and make it. So it's very much up to the interpretation of the person who is interacting with the text.
Okay.
So I think that's another thing that I really want people to understand about poetry is that it is for you, like not necessarily for you to understand that there is one meaning and one meaning alone. That's like antithetical to poetry.
Like art.
Exactly. Yeah, it literally.
Like there's not always one meaning when you look at a painting. It's like there can be multiple interpretations of that art.
Exactly. And a lot of artists would say that the point of art is to make you feel something, even if you can't explain it. So if you read a poem and you can't quite put your finger on what it means with words, but if you feel it, then it's done its job.
So is that what you would define as a good poem? Is if it evokes some kind of strong emotion from you, then it's accomplished its goal?
Yes, as long as it's doing it.
Unless you like read the poem and you're just like, I hate this poem. It's an awful poem. And then it's like it evoked the emotion of anger because you just hate it so much.
Well, I mean, there's always that danger for sure. And you don't want someone to have that specific knee-jerk reaction to it. But I think as long as you're trying to convey your emotions in an honest way and you elicit a response like emotionally from the reader, I think that's what we're trying to achieve. If possible, I think the better an indicator of how well you've done it is how close to the emotion the reader gets that you were trying to create. But it's not 100% up to you, and it's not the end all be all.
Yeah.
Like, you're just trying to make someone or help someone feel something. And it's even better when they didn't realize that they had felt something like that before, and suddenly it's here, and someone else who they don't even know is saying the thing.
Making somebody feel an emotion is hard to do. So I mean, like, if you can accomplish that with your words, and like, bravo. Like, look at like Pixar, like their ability to like make you like cry in a Pixar movie. Like, that's an art. It's definitely an art form. And so like, if a poem makes you like feel something, if art makes you feel something, I feel like, there's a lot of value in that.
Absolutely, especially in a society that almost makes us apologize for emotions and feeling a certain type of way.
Well, if you're a man, for sure.
I think that men have definitely experienced the brunt of that particular function of our society, but I think you would be hard pressed to find somebody who has never been told that they can't feel that way or feeling that way is wrong, whatever that way may be.
I guess I just meant more so like, I guess when I think emotion, my first emotion that I don't know, I just think of crying or feeling sad, and how those are kind of like emotions that are kind of men are told like not to express. And so I don't know, maybe, I mean, obviously there are more emotions than that, but
yeah, no, for sure. I definitely think that for whatever reason, men are taught to see sadness and crying as being weak, as opposed to being strong.
Yeah,
which it is a strength to be able to feel those emotions, and
despite social norms.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. And I don't know. It's a function of a lot of different things in the culture, but especially like, action movies and stuff like that. Like, Mission Impossible, or, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, or The Punisher, or whatever. Like, if something bad happens to us, we like yell no, and then we go and we kill whoever's responsible for doing this. And that's the appropriate response for men. According to popular culture, that's what's shown to me. Like, anger is more of an acceptable emotion than sadness, especially for men, even though I think it's kind of, they're two sides of the same coin most of the time.
It'd be interesting to do an experiment, like let somebody like grow up on an island with like no external like influence at all, and then it's like give them an experience that would make them angry, give them an experience that would make them sad, but like see like what would their biological instinct be, like how would they express themselves if there was nobody telling them or dictating like how they're allowed to express themselves.
Yeah, no, that would be super interesting. It kind of reminds me of Brave New World, but I haven't read that book in like a very long time.
Yeah.
But basically it's like this futuristic society, and then they find this guy who's been out in the middle of nowhere for however long, and then they bring him into their civilization, and he's just like, what the hell have you done? Like, what is going on?
Like, everyone takes a pill to be happy, everyone's having sex with everyone.
Yeah, the soma, and they go to like the feelies and all that kind of stuff, and this guy's out here like, what have you all done?
So, do you have like a favorite poem that we could look at? And I was I thought that maybe we could like analyze like something that you considered to be like one of your favorites, one that you wrote, one that you didn't write.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
I would love to.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to give a shout out to my boy Roomie, Rumi. And his real name is like Jalaluddin Rumi, and he was born in what is modern day Turkey, lived in modern day Iran, and he was born around the same time as Shakespeare.
Okay.
So the title of the poem is I Have 5 Things to Say.
Okay. Here we go.
Rock on. The wakened lover speaks directly to the beloved. You are the sky my spirit circles in, the love inside of love, the resurrection place. Let this window be your ear. I have lost consciousness many times with longing for your listening silence and your life-quickening smile. You give attention to the smallest matters, my suspicious doubts into the greatest. You know my coins are counterfeit, but you accept them anyway. My impudence and my pretending. I have 5 things to say, 5 fingers to give into your grace. First, when I was apart from you, this world did not exist, nor any other. Second, whatever I was looking for was always you. Third, why did I ever learn to count to 3? Fourth, my cornfield is burning. Fifth, this finger stands for rabia, and this is for someone else. Is there a difference? Are these words or tears? Is weeping speech? What shall I do, my love? So he speaks, and everyone around begins to cry with him, laughing crazily, moaning in the spreading union of lover and beloved. This is the true religion. All others are thrown away bandages beside it. This is the sema of slavery and mastery, of dancing together. This is not being. Neither words nor any natural fact can express this. I know these dancers. Day and night I sing their songs in this phenomenal cage. My soul, don't try to answer now. Find a friend and hide. But what can stay hidden? Love's secret is always lifting its head out from the covers. Here I am.
Wow. Let's see. And then there's this bottom part about who Rabia was.
Mm-hmm.
The woman mystic from Basra who said that a love for God should not come out of fear or hope, but in response to the beauty in the heart. She once sat indoors with her eyes closed on a lovely spring morning to teach that external magnificence is only a reflection of inner kindness and generosity, and that is divine grace. Sema, the deep listening of the ecstatic turning. Wow. So what is it about this poem that you consider it to be a favorite?
So, first of all, I love Rumi because he's almost always talking to God, or he's always talking as God,
Mm-hmm.
or he's talking as himself to someone he loves, whether it be God or someone else who is human. And it's almost always impossible to tell the difference. He switches a lot between I and you and we in his poems, and I feel like he's tapping into a bunch of different consciousnesses at the same time. And
Almost like there's no difference.
right, exactly, and that's why I love that line where he says, "This is the sema of slavery and mastery," or this is the something like beloved and beloved, like the merging of the two, because he's a very like mystic person. He was a Sufi Muslim, and Sufis are very they're a little bit different than traditional Muslims. They're very they're about ecstatic experience and dancing and whirling dervishes. Those come from Sufi beliefs. So where you like dance in a circle to achieve a certain type of rapture or ecstatic spiritual experience or feeling. So he was very inspired by that. And also, this is a poem that I found when I was reading it with somebody who I love very dearly. And like when we read it together, it was like we were talking to each other through this guy. So something that is reaching across like hundreds and hundreds of years, halfway across the world, found me at an exact moment where it was like it was supposed to be.
So you guys were reading it to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like a way for you to communicate with each other from someone else's words hundreds of years ago.
Exactly.
That's wild.
Yeah, I started crying. It's from the Collected Poems of Rumi by Coleman Barks, translated by Coleman Barks, page 9.
Okay.
Which is my favorite number.
All right. Well, I appreciate you sharing one of your favorite poetry artists.
Oh, I got a million more, but we have a finite amount of time. So.
Yeah. Well, what about something that you've written? I'd be interested in hearing one of your favorites as well.
Okay. I can definitely do that.
And then I thought maybe I could share with you maybe a few poems that I found.
Yes.
I did not write them, but
Okay.
I just they're more so just like popular poems that I came across on Reddit.
Okay, for sure. That's fine. I would have been more stoked to hear something you wrote, but that's just because you and I are here. So
Oh,
it's
I mean, I
very...
do have some like old song lyrics that I've written somewhere, but I don't know if I want to share them.
You do
I do
what
actually.
you
Actually,
feel.
I do have one that maybe I would love to share with you, but probably off camera.
Okay, fair enough. I absolutely accept that.
Yes, I'd have to go find it.
Okay, so okay. So do you remember when the Infinite Mirrors exhibit was here in Seattle?
Yes, and I wanted to go, and it was like so popular I couldn't get in.
There were lines around the block
Yeah.
for sure. You had to like reserve your spot and everything.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure I went 2 or 3 times with the same person to try and go see it, and we finally got in, I think, the 3rd time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So this is Portrait of a Mirror Selfie taken inside Yayoi Kusama's Infinite Mirrors exhibit. Inside a green box of mirrors, we are side by side, and you are taller. I wonder, do you not like that about me? No changing it, I suppose, so let's talk about something else. You're wearing the special wool jacket I loved that you always let me wear. One of a kind, alternating red and black and gray, arrows on it. Was this the last time I ever saw you in it? I know that girl stole it from the house you lived in with my old best friend. I'm in gray baseball tee with the jellyfish and my trippy purple and blue trucker hat from work with pins on it. Black skinny jeans. Our copies stretch forevermore, all sides reverberating into murky green darkness, which is the future and past. It is so amphibian how we are now both underwater and on land. I've been having trouble breathing lately, especially around you. It's a tricky business trying not to take up too much space while still hoping you see how I see the couples in the mirror. Little white tubers with tiny red spots litter around our feet and grow themselves in the population of mirrors. I am reminded of everlasting strawberry meadows as I ask myself about forever, holding my phone up so the camera catches us together. The ceiling speaks of fluorescence like back in school when I asked a girl under the tires at recess to marry me. She looked at the plastic ring I offered her. I'd gotten it from a machine at the drugstore for $0.25. She took the ring and threw it in the dirt. I stayed under until the bell rang, bitter, silent, damp tears under my eyes. We stand side by side. You are taller. You and I both hold our phones up to the mirror at the same level. Who are all these people? We have talked so many times about other lives. I'm eternally jealous of your memory, of yours. How many tries to get this right? I wonder what you are seeing while we look at the same thing. The air hums like another moment I remember so well.
Wow. You wrote that.
I did write that.
There's a lot to take in there.
Thank you. Exactly. Yes.
So what was going on in your life when you wrote that? What were you thinking?
So, well, this will be really embarrassing if she watches this episode, but I doubt she will because she's a very like effervescent figure, not often on social media. So, there's a person I love like very, 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 very much, and always had like a kind of thing for her, and we've known each other for a long time. But we went to the exhibit together. We took a selfie together, and I was just thinking about her the other night, or not the other night. Well, let me look and see when I wrote this. June 8th, one day before my birthday. I hadn't seen her in about a year. I still haven't seen her for about a year. And I was just kind of like flicking through pictures of us together. And then I saw the selfie that's mentioned in the poem. And I just got like a really strong feeling by the green murkiness in the back with the mirrors and like seeing copies of us like telescoping off into infinity, basically. Infinity mirrors. So, hey, I get it. So then I was just like struck by a very strong feeling. And I was just like, oh man, this feeling and the images, like this is a poem. This is a like very, very good poem. And I knew it was before I wrote it. And so I wrote it in about, I want to say 20, 25 minutes. I have since cleaned it up after like the first draft. I've made edits and changes and stuff, but the bones of that were developed in about 20 minutes.
Okay. Well, I really liked it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear how like you have this experience in real life and then how it gets translated through poetry and how you've chosen to express it. What was the part about the ring?
Oh, the ring.
Yeah.
So there was a girl who, I know that she won't see this. Her name's Carla. Her name's Carla Walter, and when I think we were probably like in second or third grade, but like I had like the fattest crush on her, and she was also taller than me. I was like the shortest kid in my class from like grades 1 through 12 almost.
Yeah.
But yeah, one time I was gonna ask her to marry me, and I went down to the drugstore. I lived in a town of like 1,000 people. And we had one of those old-fashioned drugstores, you know, and so they had like little plastic containers with little rings in them for like 25 cents. So I put the 25 cents in, cranked the knob, came out, and then we had these tires that were like half buried in the dirt surrounding our playground, like our jungle gym, and some of them were so big that you could fit under them when you were like 6, 7, 8 years old. So I asked her under the tires for like privacy, and we like sat there, and then I like asked her to marry me with the ring. And she,
So wait, how old are you?
I think I was like 6 or 7. The last time I was able to make a commitment that strong. And the ring got thrown in the dirt.
Aww.
And it's a very sad story, but now I can laugh about it while crying on the inside.
So she said no.
She didn't need to say anything, unfortunately.
She just took it and threw it. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Ungrateful.
I know, right?
Fine. You can do better.
Right? I appreciate that more than anything, honestly. More than how good my poem was, I appreciate that part. That hits home.
Okay, so let me read a few poems that I saw that were on Reddit that I thought were kind of interesting. Or maybe you've already heard them. Have you ever heard? I'm really bad with like titles and names. It's like hard for me to know. But there's a poetry that a lot of people on Reddit like called "Do Not Stand at My Grave and Weep" by Mary Elizabeth Fry. These are all pretty short.
Okay.
I like this one. It says, "Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sun on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift, uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die." I think I just really like that one because I recently lost a really good friend of mine who OD'd. And I think reading that made me think about like that even though I don't see him, like I still feel like he's somewhere. I don't know.
Yes.
Sometimes I still feel his presence and I don't know what it means, but like it just really resonated with me. It was really powerful in that sense. I
have a poem in my book. It's called Requiem. And it's basically about a bunch of friends of mine who have OD'd. So that message resonates with me quite a lot as well.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to have that perspective of what if this energy that powers our consciousness and the physical shell, what if it's not temporary? What if the body is temporary and this body is just borrowing this energy for a moment until it gets expended, and then the energy that is like infinite goes elsewhere.
Yeah. I mean, it seems likely to me.
Hmm.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it's just as, I don't know, I feel like it's just as valid of a theory as a lot of the other theories that people go around purporting as truth. So,
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, it's whatever you believe, as long as it doesn't hurt anyone else. I don't know that anybody has a right to tell you that it's wrong.
yeah, I love it. What about the poem by, let's see, Shel Silverstein, the blue one? It's like
I love Shell.
uh-huh. That one's fun. It's real short. It says, she had blue skin, and so did he. He kept it hid, and so did she. They searched for blue their whole life through, then passed right by and never knew. Like, real short and sweet poem. But it's like, you have these unique qualities and traits about you that, like, you or maybe are afraid of what other people think of you, and so then you don't go around expressing yourself and being who you want to be, but then you never find other people that vibe with that. And so I like that poem because it's like a reminder of, like, let your freak flag fly kind of thing. Like, be yourself.
Absolutely. No, I 100% subscribe to that. And also, it's another reason to be bold and be the freak on the outside, because, if you go through life seeming like everybody else, it's going to be that much harder to find the people who do salute the same flag, because they're not going to know.
Yeah.
It's like, as long as you're out there being your weird, freaky self, like, people are going to see it, and then some aren't going to like it, and some are going to be like, yo, we should be friends, like, now. And you're like...
That's one of the great things that I liked about going to, like, a music festival, is I feel like it's just so much more socially acceptable for people to go there and just be whoever they, like, actually want to be. And then you see other people that, like, are similar to you, and you're like, oh, you like these things. Like, probably would have never found that out if I had met you, like, in the real world. It's like, it's kind of cool to, like, see how, like, what freedom of expression can actually look like when it's when you're in a no judgment zone kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see people who have, like, pins or whatever from your favorite TV show, or like or someone's got like a really friggin' obscure reference to a certain thing that you are, like, very into, and then you both, like, strike up a friendship because you both knew this really obscure thing about this one TV show or song lyric or whatever, and you're just like, we are friends. Like, that's there's no discussion needed beyond the, hey, I like your sign, or I like your pin, and then people are just like,
I think one of the best friends that I've made through the EDM scene was because he had an affinity for corgis, and I had one too. And then we both loved these dogs so much. Like, all of a sudden we realized we had so many other things in common too. It's just such a weird thing to like a one data point can be like an indicator that, like, you have a lot more things in common. I don't know. It's weird how that works.
Absolutely. That's it's those points of connection that, like, radiate out into, like, fractals of more things that you have in common.
Yeah. All right, right. And then there's this poem. You read this one. Did you see this?
Yeah. She is a goddess to me, my sun and my moon, a luscious garden of beauty, my ship through the storm, and that butt hot.
What do you think of that poem?
It's gorgeous.
I actually really like the artwork.
Yeah, I know, right? You got the ship and
the guy is like in the water or something. Is he in the water or is he on the land, laying sitting down? I don't know.
I'm not sure, because it looks like she's standing on land, because her posture is, like, very firm. Yes. And it looks like he's just kind of like either on his knees, like, worshiping the booty or something like that. Yeah. That's what I'm getting out of it.
Yeah, or maybe he's a merman.
He could be a merman.
You can't see the rest of him.
Yeah, that's very true.
Okay, let's talk more about, like, writing poetry. Like, where do you get your inspiration from?
Okay. So the best thing about poetry and being inspired is that it trains you to be inspired and to see inspiration. Because one of the most important things for me is to remain open and receptive. I think it's a fallacy to say that there are only certain things that can be turned into poetry. I think that if you do it well, anything can be turned into poetry. Like talking about the soda can that's on your counter, and like the way that it's reflecting and bending and concave and like forming everything to its shape according to the way that light hits it and the shadows play. And it actually reminds me of the poem Anecdote of a Jar, and I can't remember who it's by. I think it's Wallace Stevens. But more openly for me, I kind of let things filter through until something that catches my eye definitely and like holds it there. Because our eyes rove around and just like take in so much data, and we process so much. And when I see something that catches my eye and makes it stop, and I just kind of like look at it and I consider it from all these different angles and filter it through my own perception, and then there's like a pinball effect where this image is like, it could be the ball or gravity, and then it suddenly like pings around and like lights up all these other different points of reference for me personally. Like the poem I just read about the mirror selfie, somehow the feeling, the emotion that I was experiencing, and the image, the prominent image in the poem also lit up the image of me being under the tires giving Carla Walter that ring. And so anything that makes that chain reaction inside me emotionally through my memory and creates all those connections immediately is something that I pay attention to and ultimately use for my poem.
Yeah, I feel like coffee helps me with that. Maybe sometimes cannabis. I don't know. I mean, like, I think there's something to be said about like there's lots of different tools out there that like I think help you connect the dots. For me, one of the things that I like to talk about I work in learning experience design, and I have to understand like how do adults learn, and the two different modes of thinking. There is, for somebody who studies this, I always forget the word, but it's actually called there's focus mode and diffuse mode. Two different modes in your brain. And so like focus mode is where like you're really trying to do something, and then diffuse mode is where you're not thinking about anything at all, and your brain's trying to make sense of everything that you've put inside it, right? So like if I go for a run, if I sit in my shower, if I lay in bed at night, if I allow like space for meditation, I think it's like your brain goes into this mode called diffuse mode where it's like trying to connect the dots and like make sense of everything. And I think those are where my eureka moments come from, where like I'll get stumped on an issue. Like, I don't know what the hell to do about this. I'm so lost. I'll go for a run with my dog. I'll go take a shower and just sit there on the floor. I'll just sit there for like half an hour and just think. And then like all of a sudden, like, I feel like, I mean, some people call it divine intervention, but I feel like just thoughts just start to come from I don't know where, and it's like a lot of the time they're like, I feel like something out there is like figuring it out for me, or it's me, I don't know.
Or those two things could be the same thing,
right?
Which is another, like, divine intervention is just another piece of language or different terminology for consciousness, unified consciousness theory, all these types of things. And you're talking about like diffuse mode. Einstein relied on that. Like, Einstein was all about like, I can't figure this thing out. I'm going to go on a walk. I'm going to sit in my chair and just kind of like stare into space and watch the light change. And pretty sure that's how he discovered the theory of EMC squared, where he was just like sitting in his living room, like spacing out, and he watched the light like move across the floor, and he was just like, oh, eureka.
And there was also Salvador Dali. One of the things that they would do is sit on a chair with a key in his hand, and when he'd fall asleep, the key would drop out of his hand, like just drop out, and the sound would like wake him back up, and then he would start writing down all of those thoughts from diffuse mode, like the eureka ideas.
Yeah, dream imagery and dream logic, and oh man, I love Dali because he cultivated inspiration in such a unique way. there's a picture of him sleeping, and there was a sign above the bed that said, "Silence, Dali is working." And like, I just love the fact that he used dreams and dream imagery to such like great heights and expanses.
So we're kind of talking about another question already, which is overcoming writer's block. So it sounds like you like trying to participate in any kind of activity that helps you connect the dots. So like, what kinds of things do you do to try to overcome writer's block, or have we touched on them?
So with regard to writer's block, oh man, I forgot what the article was, but there was an article in Poets and Writers magazine a little while ago talking about writer's block, and she basically posited that there were like 10 or 15 different issues that might be going on with you at any different time that make you call what you're going through writer's block.
Okay.
So it could be like a matter of fear of something not being perfect, or just having too much stuff going on in your life. So I don't necessarily think that writer's block is that big of a concern, especially when you're operating out of an abundance mindset as opposed to a scarcity mindset. Because if you're on a deadline, or if you are, pressuring yourself or feeling frustrated to create something, it's not going to flow as well as if you just have faith and accept that right now you don't feel like creating.
Yeah. Or maybe you just work on a different project and come back to it.
Yeah. I mean, having a bunch of different projects in the air is a great way to go about that. If I ever have like a feeling, or, like an urge to create something, usually I journal about it, and I just kind of like, I think about a feeling that I want to create. Like, I have an idea for a poem, but the emotion isn't fully formed. It's kind of like this, it's kind of like that. Normally, when I try and expound on the feeling that I'm trying to create, ideas for that will pop up, because again, the pinball machine lights up inside, and you're like, oh, this emotion reminds me of this thing that happened, or this
Ding, ding,
image.
ding, ding, ding.
Exactly. And the board just lights up, and you're like, oh, yeah, there we are. Like, that's exactly what I was looking for. And above all, I think it's important not to put too much pressure on yourself. Especially, I mean, for most people, you don't have an editor breathing down your back. You haven't signed a book deal. You haven't gotten an advance, so it's more important for you to arrive at your material organically and just kind of like let it come.
I think the issue, though, is everyone is their own worst critic.
Yes.
It's like, yes, they don't have all those things, but it's like what they're creating represents themselves and their ego, and seeing something that they are dissatisfied with is very hard for a lot of people to deal with.
Yes.
So it's like, maybe my question to you is like, what advice do you give to aspiring poetry writers out there that are extremely critical of what they do, or just any artist in general? Like, how can enjoyment be found when nothing seems right?
First of all, I would say to start a project where you promise yourself that no one is going to see it. So through doing that, eliminating the expectation of other people, all you are setting out with the intent to do is to play, because one of the most important things for children all the way up to old people is to be able to play. And if you are able to kind of establish a feeling of joy and freedom within whatever you're doing, if it gives you joy, like poetry, like writing, should give you joy ultimately. If not, you should probably find something else that gives you joy.
Yeah, why are you doing it?
Exactly. And then second of all, the feeling of fear, or, something not being enough, if you ever come across that, I would encourage you to step back and then ask yourself, is it better to try at something and fail, or just completely leave the page blank and never have tried at all?
Yeah.
Would you feel happy if you had nothing to show, and the cause of that lack is because you were afraid? Or would you rather be brave and just kind of accept that the first draft of anything is kind of crap? And then also dovetailing that with a third piece of advice, Ernest Hemingway said the first draft of anything is crap. And that's a dude who won the Nobel Prize for Literature. And he said the most important thing to do is get it down. Don't worry about how good it is, because you'll be able to fix it in post. And it's going to look so much better and sound so much better when you have new eyes on this piece that you've created. And it's almost going to be unrecognizable in sight and feeling once you're done with it.
Have you ever heard of this video right here called Famous Failures? It's just like a 3-minute video that kind of goes over some of like the most popular famous people that just had a really like rough start in the beginning. And it's like a lot of people think of these people like they were just born amazing. They were just born that way. And it's just simply not the case. Like,
right.
There is this concept that that we try to use in the learning industry called growth mindset, that it is through practice and repetition that we get better, and that every time you fail, you're one step closer to succeeding. And it's like seeing failure as like a necessary part of the experience. Now, I don't know how that translates to writing poetry. I mean, like maybe because the concept of failure is kind of subjective. Like if you read your poetry and you say, "Oh, I don't like it," maybe that's failure to yourself. But after several revisions, maybe you start to hate it a little bit less. And then it's like that is a success when you start to like your, and maybe other people start to like it. And I think you can never, there's like a famous quote that's like, it's like sucking at something is the first step to being kind of good at something.
Jake
right?
the dog.
Yeah. You've heard that?
Jake the dog. Yes. Adventure Time.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, no. I have a lot of different things to say about that. First of all, if you want to be a poet, or if you want to be a writer, if you want to be an actor, you are already that once you start doing it. Number one. You
are what you say you are.
Exactly.
You are what you believe.
You are what you do. All those types of things are true. And so
wait, am I like a TV host right now?
You are.
Oh my God.
Dude.
Holy shit.
You have arrived.
Oh my God.
And now it's only going to get better. Like that's the wonderful thing. And
it's crazy hearing you say that, because I like still don't like see myself that way, but like I am hosting a show right now, so I am.
Exactly. And that's another thing that I have to say about what the topic that you just broached, which is the more you do something, the better you get. Like I look back at some of the poems that I wrote about a year ago or whatever now, and sometimes I read from my first book of poems, and I'm almost embarrassed because they don't seem good to me anymore. They sounded great when I first wrote them, but that is 2 or 3 years of experience between that poem and where I'm at now. So that means that I'm so good, and my judgment of what is good and my abilities as a poet have progressed so far to make these things that I wrote years ago pale in comparison to my judgment now and what I'm writing now. So you get continually better the more you do anything. That is a wonderful and also sad part of life, just because it means you have to do stuff. But it's also nice because if you do stuff, you get better at that stuff.
And also, shouldn't we be grateful for looking back and being embarrassed of what we've created, because that means that we are getting better?
Yes,
right? Like
absolutely.
If you looked at everything in the past and you were super proud of it, no matter how far you get in life, you'd be like, well, are you really progressing at all?
Right. And or would you be proud, or would you be kind of sad or bored? Like if you were perfect at everything, there would be such a
where's the fun in that?
Exactly. And fun and play is what we're all about, and or we should be all about, and being able to kind of step back and recognize that this is fun. And I think that's one of the most important things that you could ever think about, is that you have to find the thing that is fun, makes you lose hours of time and all that kind of stuff, and just gives you a certain sense of joy or accomplishment.
Tell me about this book. Tell me about how did you come about like wanting to write it, and what it's about, and convince people out there watching this show to want to pick up a copy.
All right, cool. So this book came about, so the first poem I wrote in it is called Nuclear Summer, which I mentioned earlier. And this was at the tail end of my doing a lot of psychedelics, figuring out a lot of stuff about the universe, existence, my own consciousness, my emotions, my connection to other people and other animals and the world at large and all this kind of stuff. And then I hit a roadblock where I got broken up with and just felt some real emotions that I had not felt since before I did psychedelics. Because when I was on psychedelics, everything was great. I was abundance mindset all the time. Like, the world is wonderful. Everything is happening exactly as it should for me, all these other things. And then roadblock, I get broken up with, and then I move back to Seattle. I was living like in Olympia area for a while with my girlfriend. We were planning on moving back to Seattle together. I ended up moving back to Seattle alone. And so the first poem was angry. It felt betrayed. It was fed up with other people. And so I think this book in general evolved out of the knowledge and the fact of how life is a series of peaks and valleys, and how spirituality isn't always, enlightenment. It isn't always being your best self. Spirituality is a constant process to try and become better than you were yesterday. And so that's why in the about, or the info about the book, it just says spirituality isn't what you think, and enlightenment is not a bunch of chanting Om and lotus petals. So it's not always that way, a lot of the time when you're awakening or being enlightened, shit falls apart. Like, you are overwhelmed, you're having all these new emotions that you've never had before. And so I think that's what the book came out of, was just trying to navigate this forest of emotions that were coming at me. And I, especially after thinking that I had reached some form of enlightenment, to be thrust back into my humanness without the aid of psychedelics and just trying to figure out exactly what is going on. And so the book tells a kind of narrative about going from a low vibrational frequency to a higher vibrational one. So you go from one kind of mindset and gradually phase into the other, I guess. And also notice how a lot of the time they both operate at the same time.
Well, it sounds really interesting. And I love the cover. Cover is very interesting as well.
So the cover was designed by one of my, or the art for it was designed by one of my favorite artists on Instagram. His name is Eli Klemick. Also, his Instagram is NEOMLEI. Neomlei. And he did my book cover for about $150 total, I think. And then my friend,
look at this.
Yeah, his stuff is incredible. He lives in Chelan, Washington. He moved to New York for a little bit, and now he's back. But yeah, his stuff is amazing. I fell in love with it.
He likes skeletons.
Yes, he does. And so do I. I have a tattoo of a skeleton on my left shoulder blade.
What do you think it is about skeleton art that is appealing to some people but also is jarring to others? It's you're being forced to face the reality that we are all going to die. Is that?
Yes.
It's and people kind of get off on haha, I'm gonna make you think about this.
I think that it's
what is it?
Number one, it's aesthetically pleasing to some. Even without a knowledge of what it is, I think it's a beautiful image. But the skull has been a trope in art for a very long time. In plays, it has always made an appearance, especially back in Shakespeare's time, like Hamlet, the famous scene with the to be or not to be. So that's a trope called memento mori, and that's Latin for remember your mortality, or remember you are going to die.
I think a lot of people are trying to forget that.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people are trying to remind people because they know they're trying to forget. And I think that's an important thing, because it's another, go out and make the art you want to make. Go out and ask the girl in second grade to marry you. Go out and take that risk, because 20 years.
Life is short.
Yeah, and 20 years later, if you live that long, you're going to be more upset by the things you didn't do than by the things you did do, because there's always going to be that wondering. And so I think it's important. I think it's an important message always to just remember, like, dude, no time is guaranteed except for the present. Like, we always get so bogged down, like, anxious about the future, but, like, what are you doing right now that is going to be able to, like, see you through these next however many years or decades or, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, for sure. I like this one.
What does it say? The voyage
continues
regardless. Yeah.
And then this one's called.
Oh, his stuff
my
is so
God.
awesome.
I have a friend that would love this.
And you can buy prints of his stuff, I believe, on Etsy. And he also sells stickers, like holographic stickers you can put on your laptop or whatever the case may be. His stuff is amazing. I have one of his pieces of art, and it's, oh man, I can't remember what it says on the piece of art. But
is this him?
Yes, that is him. That is he.
Okay. Great artist. It's amazing you got him to do your book cover.
I was honestly surprised at how receptive he was and how low the price was that he quoted me. I was just like, all right.
And are you planning on trying to get him to do the cover of your next book as well?
No, it's going to be a different kind of vibe.
Okay.
So
and the title, tell us how you came up with the title of this one.
All right. So, so I was having dinner at Anthony's on the pier in Seattle with the person who I was dating at the time, and the book is named after a poem of the same title, very last poem in the book. And so one time we were at the at Anthony's on the pier, like looking out over the water, and I looked down the pier to the shipping yard. And, those big cranes that are there to lift shipping containers off of the actual like cargo ships, they're all orange. And they look like dinosaurs, like straight out of like Land Before Time.
Dude, it's so interesting that you're saying that, because I would always say when I would be in that area that it looks like Jurassic Park, like all the cranes and
It's
does.
Littlefoot. Yeah,
Yeah,
Littlefoot's mom.
You remember back when the viaduct was still there?
Yes.
So I'd be driving down the viaduct out of Seattle, like going south, and I would start humming, na 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 na.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, so the dinosaurs are orange in Seattle, and if you know, you know. And so, my buddy was dating someone who works at the shipyard, and she took a picture on the pier of the orange dinosaurs with Seattle skyline in the background. So I found a dude on Instagram who does really amazing like watercolor stuff. And I will tell you the account of that so we can pull that up too, because his stuff is also very, very good. But he does watercolors, so I was going to take that picture and have him do a watercolor painting of the actual picture that I got, and so that's going to be the actual book cover. So I'm kind of going with a more watercolor smeared like water type vibe. It makes sense because it's Seattle, I guess. But yeah, there's a picture of I think, or it looks like the Manhattan Bridge. I don't know if it is the Manhattan Bridge, like further down somewhere. But that's the kind of vibe I'm trying to create with
Interesting.
This book. Yeah.
Wow. This is the guy?
Yeah.
This is the guy.
Mm-hmm. That the guy.
And so how did you discover this guy?
I literally searched on Instagram watercolor art,
Okay.
watercolor painting, watercolor landscape or cityscape. And I've had his I've had the idea for that like a watercolor type cover for probably about 8 months, 10 months. So the whole time I had been like looking for that type of art, and I was just like, that's the dude.
There you go. Well, Ry Downey, I've learned a lot about poetry, and I'm excited to check out your book right here, The Flowers Leaning Toward the Sun. For all you out there, definitely check his book out. You can pop over to Amazon right here and pick up a copy. And I imagine your newer book will be on here as well. You can just search Ry Downey. He's the author. And how can viewers out there get in touch with you if they want to collab or ask you questions about your poetry, etc.? What would you want them to do?
Just pop over to Instagram and look up Ry of Wands. That is me. I'm also in the process of getting together the second issue of my poetry magazine that I'm making with my buddy Ely and I, and it's called Beatific Poetry Magazine, beatific.mag on Instagram, and it's for poetry that tries to exhibit the beatific state of bliss or awe and try and kind of like capture the present moment and kind of like lift us up to a more rapturous state than we normally find ourselves.
There we go. So yeah, if you're interested in poetry and want to follow his magazine, follow this Instagram account or reach out to him on Ry of Wands. All right. Ry, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
This was a great experience.
It was a lot of fun.
All right. Talk to you guys later.